What's going on, gang, and welcome back to another episode of Scared of Normal. I'm Mike Murfitt, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts Cheyenne Murfitt and Matt Cordova. And you may have noticed we took the last week off from doing a podcast, and the reason for that being is we had to take our own advice and shut it down for a week and recalibrate and re-energize. But we're back, and we're so stoked. The last month, November, was just absolutely crazy here at Traction, and we are beyond grateful for that. So thank you all so much for the love and support. And that takes us into what today's episode is going to be about. And, today we want to talk about having an attitude of gratitude.
All right, friends, we're going to get started with this episode in defining gratitude for you. So by definition, gratitude means the quality of being thankful, readiness to show appreciation for, and to return kindness. And we're going to start with a heavy hitter and ask these guys what gratitude means to them.
I mean, I feel like the definition outlines it pretty well, but I think it really just comes back down to being aware of all the good things going on in life, and I think that's something that's sometimes very hard to be aware of. It's very hard to be grateful sometimes, especially when we live in the world that's we're inundated with all the bad things all the time, whether we're seeing it on social media or on the news or, talking about stuff with our friends. It's hard to talk about the things we're excited about. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's very true. I mean, for me, it's, I guess, finding the little thing, and then if that, it's where if you can find a little thing to be grateful for, which is I guess definition of what gratitude is, right? Then that's where it comes from.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, gratitude is so much so associated with greater happiness, right? So the more you can focus on being grateful, like you're saying, for the small things, which I think is where it all stems from. You can't be excited or grateful for the bigger things in life if you can't be grateful for the small things,
The building block, right?
Yeah, the building blocks. So I don't know, I guess what's a good example of something small you're grateful for, Cheyenne?
I actually do a lot of little gratitude journaling, and something that repeatedly comes up on my little gratitude list is my morning coffee. And maybe I'm a little biased because obviously I get to enjoy the best coffee. But that's something that's so simple, so little. It's a routine in my day. It's something that so many people can probably relate to, drinking your morning cup of coffee. But I'm just so grateful for it. It just makes me happy. It's one of those things that first thing in the morning, I know a cup of coffee is headed my way.
That's awesome. A big one for me is always, and it's kind of funny because I don't think many of us think about it often, but it's turning the water tap on. Every time you turn a water tap on and water comes out, and for most of us here in the United States, that's clean water that you can drink, and that's pretty freaking crazy, right? How awesome is that? You don't really ever have to question if that water is healthy or not.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something really cool to be grateful for. How many times in your life have you gone to turn on a tap of water and ever questioned if clean water was going to come out of it? That's pretty bizarre. So
Very true.
When I'm having bad days or whatever, I think about that a lot, where I'm well, when I flip a switch, lights come on, and when I turn a water tap on, water comes out of it. So it's not that bad. It's coming back down to those small things to be grateful for. And these are just tiny little examples of what those things are, but there's so many of those things throughout our day. It's think about the fact that you get to take a deep breath. That's pretty cool.
That's mine.
Yeah. Just being able to breathe and just experience life. Those are small things to be grateful for. I guess maybe in the grand scheme, being able to experience life is probably a big thing to be grateful for. Yes. However, being aware of that every day it's really good. So
yeah.
I mean, yeah, you just knocked that thing out of the park. Holy smokes.
Yeah. Well, I guess, a big thing for us all to ask ourselves is where do you find gratitude in your day? And if you don't find gratitude or, those small moments of happiness, how can you kind of start reprogramming yourself to find those moments and be aware of those moments, right? Develop a habit of finding gratitude. And I think that's a very difficult thing to do because, we're so inundated with information all day long. So to take a step back and just focus on ourselves for a second is very difficult, right?
It's hard for us to slow down.
Yeah.
We're so taught to just like full throttle everything. Like your checklist has to be how long and you have to accomplish so many things throughout your day. It's like, it's so hard for people just to take that moment. Like for me, like what I was grateful for was breathing.
Yeah.
And like my thing, what I've been trying to like put into my routine throughout my days, maybe it be, I mean, it varies every day, but like at least take 5 minutes and go sit and have just a time where I can breathe and just like look up and like watch the clouds or watch the leaves go, and like to have that time to where I can just like have time to breathe. And like, cause like breathing is so good for our bodies. I mean, that sounds silly, but like what it does is like, if you are able to breathe slowly and do certain inhales and exhales at a time, like it like slows down your heart rate, which brings less stress, which makes, you know, it counts down to so many different things. And it's like, if you can do that into your normal day, it's like what you, and then like during that, you're reflecting on, man, I get to do this. And then like, I can't wait to do this after work, or I get to do this before work, or, you know, so on and so forth, whenever you get your time to breathe.
Yeah.
And it's just like, almost just like a small meditation or like your time of thinking. And it's, dude, it's crazy. It helps so much. It's been helping me a lot.
Yeah. I've been having to like do that for myself. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, like the last month here at Traction has just been full throttle. And, you know, I don't want to come off and sound ungrateful for that, but it's like we've been in the trenches. We've almost doubled our biggest month in terms of roasting. Like we've roasted so much coffee this month. So we're like living here at the roastery right now. And, you know, I'm like getting home and my feet hurt and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then Cheyenne was like, dude, how cool is that though? And like I had to take a second and like take that deep breath and be like, wow, like, you know, you kind of remove yourself from the day to day of the craziness.
Take that step back.
Yeah, and you look around and you're like, wow, like how cool is it that we are roasting this much coffee and that we're getting to share it with incredible people, and that this brand is continuing to grow, and that we get to, you know, spread Scared of Normal with, you know, the stoke, the positivity, all these things with people that align with what we're doing. Like that's a really special thing, right? And like it makes those moments where we're like standing here roasting and packaging and shipping and all those things, like the mundane tasks, it makes all of those so much more beautiful. And if you can look at it through that lens, then it's like, okay, I'm excited to go
keep pushing
do that, you know? Because for me, like I love, you know, the function of that I love within the business is like being out and networking and interacting. And sometimes I'm like, oh man, if I'm in here, I can't do that. And like we're not doing all the good things, but you know, it's ebbs and flows, right? And so being grateful for those moments on both sides is very important.
People still need those beans.
Yeah, people still need the beans, you know, and it's hard to be like, I could be at the skate park or I could be at an event hanging out with people and slapping fives, but like, you know, it's not all sunshine and rainbows all the time. Like you got to be in the trenches and you got to do the work, and you got to be grateful for both sides of that, because if you're not, like, you know, it's just the equation doesn't add up at the end of the day. So
I like that you use the word lens, because I like, for me, when I visualize in my brain like what gratitude and what taking like that practice looks like to me, it really is like a lens type thing. Like I feel like we're so like hyper focused and we're like zoomed in on like our days and our everyday like mundane tasks, or when we're just like moving through our day, we're so like up close to it that we're like, this is what's happening to me right now, and this is what's bothering me, and this is what's, you know, this is just what my reality is. But it's like those moments of gratitude is when you get to zoom out and you get to look at like your life as a whole, and you're like, oh my gosh, like
you get to look at the bigger picture, right?
Yeah. And then like all of those little things start like pulling itself together, and you're like, wow, I'm grateful for this, and I'm grateful for this, and I see this, and it's like this big picture vision of like what life is and what we get to experience in our life, versus that like zoomed in, hyper focused, this is like my task at hand. But if I can stop and learn to like zoom out of my life, then I can find lots of moments of gratitude.
Yep. I even had that moment last night. So me and Matt were driving around delivering coffee here in Longmont. So if you don't know and you live in Longmont, we do free local coffee delivery where one of us drives around and actually like puts that coffee on your doorstep. And there's this like little older cute couple that orders coffee from us, and in fact I'm not really sure how they found us, but they order religiously and it's so cool. And I was like running up to the door with their package, and like they had their house all like decorated for the holidays, and it like hit me. It's like, you know, when you're in those trenches, you're not like really rationalizing. It's like, oh, these are real people, like they're enjoying this product, da 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 da. And it like hit me. I'm like, how cool is it that we get to make this thing that these people are excited to enjoy, you know? And like, you know, Cheyenne said it really well. It's like, you know, you're grateful for that coffee in the morning, and like I'm sure as well for them, like they're excited to make that coffee in the morning. And it's like, it's cool to think that we get to make something that makes somebody happy in the morning, you know? And it like
they add to their like daily routine.
Yeah, like I like teared up almost walking back to the car. I was like, holy crap, dude. Like those are the moments that make it all worth it, right? Like those are the moments that like when we're in here like roasting non-freaking stop, it's like, oh man, this is so like, I wish I could be out riding, or I wish I could be out doing this. But then you run the coffee up to the door. The same thing when somebody shares it on Instagram, you like put it all together that it's like a real person on the other end enjoying it. And like the same way that like when I buy something from a small local company or whatever, like it's, you know, family owned or whatever it is, like I get to feel good about supporting that, you know? So it's like this really cool ecosystem of gratitude, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think we must have had a very similar moment last night, because whenever you were running that up, it hit me as well. It's like, how cool is it that the owner of the company, the dude who just roasted this, is running this package up at whatever time it was. I was like, how cool is that? And then I don't know, just I had a small moment in the car whenever you did that. It's like, dang, that's so
funny because we were like pulling up to the house, and I was like telling you about them, because like one day I was like running the coffee up to the door, and the lady like popped her head out, and she's like, it is actually a real person that delivers this. And like we had like a 25-minute conversation about traction, and like, you know, she's definitely not in our like, I hate using the word like demographic of people who buy our coffee, but like it was just so cool like getting to interact, you know, face to face like that, and like see that she loved like the energy that traction was. And like, I don't know, that just meant a lot. And it comes back to being grateful, is like being aware of those things, especially when you're in the trenches. So like whether, you know, you're working that 9-to-5 job, or you're out training for, you know, a big ride or whatever it is, it's when you're in the moments of, you know, working on the task, it's really crappy. But try and zoom out and look at it from that lens of having a perspective of all the things you can be grateful for. You know, if you hate your 9-to-5 job, be grateful because it is putting food on the table. You know, it's like those little things, because it's easy to get in that headspace. It's so much easier to be, what is the opposite of grateful? What is that? The antonym?
I don't know the exact
I guess that would be the word for it.
Yeah. I don't know what the antonym is. Let's look.
Let's look it up.
We did this last time too.
Live definition.
Grateful antonym. Let's look. Ungrateful. That's all it says.
There we go. I
There's
should have
not like
known
a
that.
direct antonym for it, but yeah, it's like, it's very easy to be ungrateful, right?
Yeah.
And like you're honestly not even aware that you're being ungrateful sometimes. And like we've all found ourselves there, but it is so easy to get there, and then it's kind of a downward spiral from there. Like it's very hard to pull yourself out of that space of being ungrateful for things.
There's something that I learned, oh my gosh, like months and months ago, and I can't even remember where I heard this from, but it's something that has stuck with me, especially in those moments that you're talking about, like the hard moments, the moments where you're like in the trenches, you're like grinding, it feels difficult, it feels like you can't look beyond that. And it is the idea of when something like that is happening to you, or when you feel like the world's against you, or like, I don't know, something happened, right? That doesn't feel great. You flip it around by saying, this is good because, and you find a way to explain that this is good because of some reason. So I'll give an example. I just recently this week lost all of my social media accounts.
Yep.
And
for those who don't know, that's how Cheyenne makes a living.
Yeah. So it has been an emotional roller coaster over here. But long story short, lost every social media account that I have. And that is that's where my business runs from. That's how I bring money in. And that is extremely stressful to just like log in one day and have it all gone. And we're currently still working through it.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
We've spent a few days trying to recover these accounts, and we think we may have done it. And shout out to
our girl Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly.
But anyways, so in that situation, I'm trying to think of different ways that this is good. So I'm trying to flip it around and be like, okay, well, this is good because it gives me some downtime to like recast a vision for the future, right?
Yep.
This is good because it causes me and forces me to slow down and to not constantly be thinking about like, okay, what do I have to post next? Or what do I need to talk about next? Or what like information needs to get out there? What sale am I hosting for this or that? So yeah, when you flip it around and you say, okay, this kind of sucks, but this is good because, and you can give yourself a reason that whatever circumstance you're in is serving you in some kind of way. It's a part of the journey. It's part of the growth. Then I don't know, just another
it makes
layer
you
of
more
gratitude.
Grateful for the moments that are occurring, right?
Yeah.
Before we like move on, I also want to give a shout out to Eric Yeager, who's a member of the Traction family, who introduced us to Kelly, who is somebody over at Facebook who's helping us hopefully resolve the issue.
Yeah.
So
Eric.
Yeah. Again, it comes like full circle, right? Like it's I feel like I say it on every episode, but I'm so grateful for the members of the Traction family and like the experiences and the relationships that bloom out of this awesome family. It's so cool. So big shout out to Eric. Thanks for making or helping out. I posted on my personal Instagram yesterday asking if anybody knew anybody at Facebook or Meta, and he responded, and he's been very helpful. So freaking cool.
So grateful for you.
Go internet whenever that works out.
Yeah, the internet's very cool sometimes.
Isn't it crazy though? Whenever you like find like gratitude in your day, like whenever you take that small step back and like your mental health kind of gets better, and it's like you can find clarity in certain things, and it's I don't know,
it's almost
I nerd
addictive,
out on it. Yeah, it's super addictive.
Because like I go back to it all the time, but like I always find myself in those spots of just being like so down. Like I'm a very like peaks and valleys kind of person. Like I'm either super stoked or I'm super bummed. But the last like year, I've been really trying to focus on those moments of like, okay, where can I find that in my day? Because like, if you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it.
Yeah.
And it's not going to just like float into your brain. Like
if anything, it'll go the other way.
Yeah, for sure. So like trying to practice that a little bit more. And like, I can tell for myself, like that I have been wanting to like go ride my bike more or whatever it is, because I'm not like sitting there like bummed out about like, everything's wrong, everything's broken, blah, blah, blah. Like I have too much work to do. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do all my work, and I'm stoked that I still get to go ride my bike. Yeah. And then you get out and make it happen, right? So
it's like a ripple effect. I think the coolest thing is that it literally doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't you don't have to be anything special to be able to sit there and take some breaths and find some gratitude in your day.
In fact, being ungrateful does cost you.
Yes.
Being grateful doesn't cost you anything, but being ungrateful does.
Yes.
It costs you your mental health. It costs you a lot of happiness. It costs so many things. And, it's almost built into us that we're going to be ungrateful, Yeah. It's hard to like break that mindset and like develop that, positive mental attitude. And like, you almost feel like when you're kind of like running through the motions of like trying to figure out what to be positive and grateful for, you almost feel like you're like inflating certain things, or you're kind of lying to yourself, but like it's because you're forming a new habit, right?
Yeah.
And like our brains, I've almost like, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like they've developed to look for the bad things.
It's almost easier that way.
Yeah, it's so much easier, but like when we express appreciation, what we appreciate grows and increases in value, right?
Yeah.
So like it can be the small thing. If you express like how appreciative for it you are, like that, the value of it explodes tremendously.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a big thing. Like most of the things that we can be grateful for, we're in control of. That's inside of us, right? And it's very hard to understand that because we're always looking for like external things to be grateful for. But most of the things that can make us the most happy, the most grateful, we control them. They're us.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just, it's kind of like a pushback on society, right? Like society has kind of driven us and into like these external validations for who we are and our value. And and where we find our happiness. There's like science to it with like how social media apps work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we literally get serotonin, like, or dopamine, or I don't even know which one, probably both of them, when somebody likes our photos, right? Or reaches out to us, or like follows us, or whatever it is. And it's like, it's kind of fighting back and saying like, okay, I'm not going to, but that's like a very conscious decision that you have to make.
Yeah.
Like you have to be like, okay, I'm not going to get my validation from these externals. I'm going to get my validation from these internals. And when you stop and you practice the gratitude and you sit for 5 minutes and you just breathe in the air and you find those pockets of like, oh my gosh, this is so freaking cool. I get to do this and I get to do this and I'm grateful for this. And I'm sipping my morning coffee right now. Like, how rad is that?
Yep.
That like nobody can take that from you. Like that's yours. That's your happiness. That's inside of you. That doesn't have to do with anybody else, which I think is the best part about this.
Well, I love what you said right there too, because it's pretty much the common theme of these types of episodes that we're doing is like living a life of intention, right? Like being conscious of the decisions you're making, being intentional. And I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to being grateful. It's like you have to intentionally focus on that, because if you're not being conscious of that, I think those ungrateful things do creep into your head. The less intentional you are with your actions and all those things, those ungrateful thoughts can more easily penetrate that like mental capacity that you've got, and then you're bummed out. But if you're being intentional and you're making moves with intention, then it's far easier to be grateful because you're looking at the variables there, right? And you know like what you're putting in or what you're getting out because you're being intentional.
Right.
But if you're running through the motions of something, like you're not really sure where to be grateful, perhaps. So
I like too how you added like how when you practice those things, like they're yours, like no one can take them from you. It's like, it's so cool when you add that into it to where it's like a solid, like a good baseline, right? And then like, if anything comes, dude, no storm, whatever, like as long as you have that, it's like nothing's getting swept from underneath you. And then you just like keep pushing forward. And it's like, it almost bears you more for the storms, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you do practice it. Cause then it's like, well, if I keep this down and like, I know this, and this, and I keep doing these things, nothing's going to take you down. It's cool. I think that just made those two connections. I thought it was really sweet.
I love that.
Well, it is an intoxicating feeling. And like when you do interact with people who have been practicing, mindfulness and being grateful and intentionality, like you can tell like the frequency or like the vibration that's coming off of them is different
energy.
It's crazy.
And I think the cool thing is that it like builds upon each other. Like,
It's
like you
compounding.
said, like it's like, yeah, if you listen to this episode and you go and you sit for 5 minutes and you find some gratitude and you journal out the things that you're grateful for, like you're going to feel completely different. And it only takes a couple minutes. But it's like that's where that baseline is, like you're talking about. But it's like the more that you do it, the more consistent you are, the more like that you put that into your daily practice, like your baseline grows. So like the energy that you're bringing into your everyday, it's like it's changing and it's shifting and it's like, oh my gosh, I vibrate up here now. Or, and it's like, it's just cool.
We've all had interactions with people that are either on, the very bottom of that scale where they are, so bummed out, and they're kind of, it's self-inflicted, sometimes like there's obviously, mental health pieces that are out of our control.
Right.
But for the ones that are in our control, the self-inflicted stuff brings us down so much. And when you interact with those people, like you end up being bummed out as well. But on the opposite side of that spectrum, somebody who has done that very intentional, conscious work, you leave those interactions and you're stoked. And I have a couple friends that come to mind where like one of the people that we've done a podcast with, his name's 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝙍𝙀𝘿, and he's the owner of Pine Print Shop. And I say it all the time, like every time I leave hanging out with that dude, I'm like, I'm going to take over the world, because he is just like, he's slapping you on the back and he's slapping fives and he's stoked. And I've never seen that dude not smiling. Even like times I've walked into Pine and they're having a really shitty day, like he smiles and he takes the time to like make you feel welcome. And there's something special about that, right? Like being very aware. And like there's another guy that we ride BMX with quite a bit, and he's like, I would say like for anybody that I know, he's the king of this like type of mindset, like being grateful. And it's like when you're around him, it's almost intoxicating. Like you leave and you're just like, you feel like you can breathe a little deeper,
Yeah.
and like the conversations that you're having are like kind of at a higher level. It's just very cool to like experience that, you know? And like, I think we've all probably have those people in our lives that we can look at and say like, not necessarily like, oh, I don't want to be around that person, but like, you know, they're bummed out and like, how can I help? And like, it's a different energy when you leave those two different interactions, right? So for me, like, I'm like, who do I want to be? Well, I want to be the dude that's like coming into the room and everybody's like perking up because like the energy, you know, and it's a conscious me and Cheyenne literally during Thanksgiving week last week, you know, we had to run from family thing to family thing, and we're like, all right, like let's be those people at these interactions, you know, like how can we walk into the room and like bring happiness and smiles and like, as opposed to like, we're here, you know what I mean? Like it's a conscious decision. It's an intentional decision. So
I was just going to say, like, I feel like that kind of ties it all back up together in the fact that like this podcast is so much about intentionality in your life, and in thinking about the interaction that you like, the impact that you want to have on the people around you. And I think that is a really intentional choice. You either are the person that's kind of like sucking the energy and you can feel it, or you're the person that's bringing the energy and you're the one that's like creating that ripple effect of like, I want to be somebody who touches other people in a way that feels good, right? Like I want to be the one who walks into the room and like just brings joy to other people. Like you can just see it and you can feel it. And I actually remember that happening for me several years ago when I was teaching, and I was kind of going through a season of like, oh my gosh, this is really, really hard. Like I don't want to be here. This is hard. But the reality of it was like, that was my job and I had to show up there every single day. And there were pieces of it that I loved and there were pieces of it that were challenging for me. But when I was in that season of like, oh, this is really, really hard for me to show up every day, that's what I thought of. I was like, okay, but how can I, because the reality is that I am showing up every day, how can I show up and be like the best version of myself? How can I show up and make these kids feel so seen and so loved? And how can I do that for the adults that I'm also interacting with? So like it's a total shift of like, I want to be intentional with this. And then it goes backwards of like, okay, well, if that's how I want to show up in the world, what do I personally need to do? Like what moves do I need to make in my routines before I show up to be with people that is going to help support that goal? And gratitude is always one that does that for me. So
I love that. That's like spot on exactly like what this is about. You know, it's like, obviously you are going to have bad days and you're going to need people to like pour into you. And we're not saying that like you don't need that. Like you can be very positive and grateful and intentional and like still have a really shitty day and need good people around you, right? Like that's not going to just cease to exist. However, you can lessen the blow by creating some routines or some new habits that, you know, help you navigate those like really crappy days, right? Like, because they're gonna happen. In fact, they're probably gonna happen more often than really good days. But the only way we can, you know, be aware and navigate is by doing the hard work. So,
and that's life, right?
Yeah.
Like,
even too, like with what you just said, like whenever, like, you know, you could be the most positive, optimistic person ever, but like, you know, everyone has a bad day, but being able to surround yourself with other people like-minded like that. So when you do have those bad days, because it's like an exchange of energy, right? So it's like, as long as you're vibrating high and then you are surrounded with those high vibrating peoples, you know, when you're those days when it's low, it's like, you know, you get that fill back up, you know, it's like an exchange. You're meeting somewhere, but like the median is higher because the other, you know, you're already at that big baseline.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's what's hard with, you know, hanging out with the people who are on the low vibrations. So the baseline is lower. So you're, you know, it's sucking the energy out of you. So it's,
the second you start doing like, you know, start to be more aware and try to be more grateful and intentional, you start to attract people that are that way. And also you can start to inspire other people who may not do that, you know? And I think that that's a really fun thing. It's like when you can start to see that ripple effect, like I've seen it from people that I look up to. And then I've tried to incorporate some of those things into my life. And I've kind of seen that, like, I don't want to say like, oh, I've helped other people, you know, like I don't want to be that guy, but like I've seen other people like, or they've relayed to me like, oh, I did this thing because you said, or whatever, you know, and it's like, it's really cool to see that like positively affect somebody else's life. It's like, it's a chain of events that occur, and it's like if you can be kind of a cog in that wheel that like hands it off to the next person, then they can go, and it is a ripple effect,
Yeah.
And you don't even have to talk about it. You don't even have to do anything.
No.
People just see it. You feel it. That's the best part about it. It's like you just like without even trying to do it, people are just like, oh, I feel that. It's like the vibration, the energy is there. I don't know. We talk about it all the time. It's like, man, we leave sessions or places like that energy was crazy. It's like, it's wild how you can feel, it makes your hair on your arm raise. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's cool.
I mean, in that same light, like I have shown up to sessions and everybody's bummed out, and like you just sit there and you're kind of mopey, but if the energy's high and like, it's funny, like, talking about the bike stuff, but even like the music that you're listening to during this, like all those things like, play into, and it goes back to that intentionality, right? Like if you're not like setting the mood, setting the vibe, having the right people around, like it does kind of interfere with the end goal of being grateful, right? Like you have to be aware of all those variables too. So, well, I think it's good maybe just talk a little bit about how you develop an attitude of gratitude. And I think the first step really is, you got to begin by asking yourself, like, what can I be grateful for? And at the beginning of this episode, we kind of listed off a few things that we're all grateful for, and some of the things you're grateful for might be the same, or you might have other things in your life that you're like, I have a car that drives me from A to B, and it's cold outside and there's heat. I'm pretty grateful for that. Like, that's pretty cool. You know, it can be the smallest thing in the world. It can be the biggest thing in the world. But I always like to look at the smallest things, because again, if you can't be grateful for those, the bigger things are harder to be grateful for. So
that one. And then there's this one that is about when you wake up. And I think that is something that I've been trying to get really good about. But waking up every day and either saying it out loud or writing down 3 things that you're grateful for. I've found a lot recently that the way that I wake up impacts the rest of my day so incredibly much. So even something as simple as, like, for me, putting my phone in the kitchen to charge instead of having it by my bedside, so that that's not the first thing that I wake up and look at, because like we were just saying, like, that's an external validation type situation thing. So if I can start with me, and I can start with like no phone, but I can sit there and lay in bed and just be grateful for the sun shining through my window and the fact that I woke up that morning and the cup of coffee that Michael usually brings into the room, then like I start on such a different vibration than I do when I wake up in a rush and I stare at my phone first thing and I don't think about the things that I'm grateful for. So yeah, I feel like that intentionality with the first things that you're feeding your brain is powerful.
yeah, I think that's amazing.
Huge,
Yeah. For me, like, I always have a hard time like vocalizing or writing that stuff down. So like I kind of have like an internal dialogue with myself all the time, because I really do struggle with like even note taking. Like I don't take notes ever, and it's something I should probably get better at. But yeah, I like have this like wild internal dialogue going on with myself all the time, and it's about this same thing. So, whether it is for you an internal dialogue, or writing stuff down in your phone or on notes or wherever it may be, or again, vocalizing it, like, yeah, whatever works for you is what helps make it happen. So I think also, reflecting and acknowledging what you have done or accomplished, in a day or in a week, a month, a year, but give yourself credits for the big and small wins that you've achieved, because that's like another huge thing. It's like, we've talked about this a ton on previous episodes, but like if you're not celebrating the small wins, then celebrating the big wins feels a lot more empty, because you get there and you're just like, wait, this is it. But if you celebrate those little wins along the way, the big ones feel that much better, right? You can be that much more grateful. And like, if you can also, like I was saying at the beginning of this, like I was feeling very down and in the dumps, and kind of just because we were in the trenches, but I wasn't celebrating those little wins, And the second that I stepped back and started doing that, it's like, okay, like this is badass. This is badass that not only are we building a really fun brand that we can be proud of, but we're doing it alongside of people that we consider family. That's badass, right? Like there's a lot of value. There's a lot of gratefulness in that. But you don't get there without saying, like, every single package that we're packaging up, whether it be, you know, a bandana or a bag of coffee, like that's sick. It could be a keychain. I don't care. Like, we're grateful for that. You listen to a podcast episode, we're grateful for that. Like, you don't even have to spend money. Like, it's very cool, you know? And like, again, like I even sometimes editing these podcasts, like sometimes there's like issues with like sound or whatever, and I'm going crazy. And like, it's usually the night before because we're always running so far behind, but get it published the next day, and we'll get, you know, a handful of messages on Instagram or wherever, or text messages, and people are stoked. And it's like, again, it comes back to that gratefulness, you know? It's like, how cool is it that we get to do this?
Yeah.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
So yeah, celebrate those things.
Celebrate the littles. This is something that I used to do with you a lot, but I need to start asking you again. And I don't even know if you noticed that I did it, but I used to ask you a lot, like, what was the best part of your day today when you would come home? And like forced you to tell me what the best part of your day was. But I think that even like something as simple as that one little question, like with the people that you spend the most time with, like, and I genuinely want to know, right? Like, I want to know, what did you do today? And what was like your favorite part of your day? What was the best thing that happened to you? And that like also feeds me, right? Like, me hearing something amazing or something that like for you was a great part of your day, like that makes me feel really great.
Yeah, that's cool.
I can tell you what the best part of my day is going to be.
What?
It hasn't happened yet, but we're all going down to Denver today, and we're going to hang out with 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝙍𝙬. If you're not familiar with 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝙍𝙬, 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝑎𝑑 is a nonprofit organization that donates bicycles, skateboards, instruments, does river cleanups. They donate clean drinking water, just all kinds of cool things. But today we are going to build 75 bikes that will be donated to a first grade elementary school. That's a Title I school. Is it Title I or Title IX?
Title I.
Title I. And that basically means, what does that mean exactly, Cheyenne?
It means that there's a certain percentage of students at that school that are on free and reduced lunch.
Yeah. So kids that are very deserving of cool stuff. So we're going to go build bikes for them tonight, and then we're going to go donate them tomorrow. So every time these things pop up, it's one of those things for me that like I feel so grateful for. Like, I'm almost like tearing up right now because it's so cool. Like, we just did one on Monday where we donated 75 bikes, and like seeing those kids, like, again, the gratefulness, like that's, you get to experience that. And that's almost intoxicating too, is when you get to like do something good and like experience how grateful people are for those actions. Like, it's so cool. So very thankful, very grateful to be doing that this evening.
Yes.
I'm pumped.
That'd be super fun.
Yeah. And then we get to go donate them to an elementary school tomorrow. So it's going to be amazing, you know? And if you are looking to do a little bit of good yourself, go over to 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝑎𝑑.org, see what they've got going on. You can donate, you can volunteer. Yeah. Super fun organization. We do stuff all over the country. So a little plug there.
Plug in.
Yeah.
Love that.
Another big thing I think too, you know, with being grateful though, is like acknowledging other people and thank them for inspiring or helping and supporting you. This is another thing we've talked about on previous episodes, whether it's somebody on Instagram that you don't even know, you know, send those people a message, befriend them, let them know that they're like a big part of your day, making you happy. There's a guy who just followed us on Traction the other day, and I sent him a message because like his work is I've always thought it was cool. And it was so cool seeing that. And like, I just wanted him to know that like, hey dude, like you've stoked us out so much before. And like the fact that you're here, that you're a part of this family, like that means a lot to us.
Yeah.
You know, like acknowledge and thank people, because more than likely, like they're not getting that as much as you would think they are. You know?
True.
Yeah.
Like, I can think of a very specific person and conversation that we had right here in this building. Somebody who is like an icon in this industry, not in any specific industry, because I don't want to like sell anybody out here. But I was telling them like I love their work and their vision and all the things that they do, and they responded to me by saying, "Dude, nobody ever tells me that." And like, you would think by looking at their work and how many projects they've worked on, and like so many people know them, you would think they'd hear that all the time, but they don't. You know, and it was like, you could see like how sincerely stoked he was, and like, you know, to see that somebody was grateful for their contribution and their acts. And like, so yeah, don't hesitate to do that to other people. Like, sometimes like when I'm doing that for people, like I'm like, I don't want to feel or make them feel like I'm like fanboying or being too cheesy, but like people can tell when you're being genuine and actually grateful for what their contribution is to whatever it is that you enjoy. So yeah, go out of your way, acknowledge them.
I think it's a powerful thing when you let somebody know that they're seen, and
Yeah.
you let them know that like, hey, I see you and I acknowledge you and you're doing something amazing. And I think that like the ripple effect of that and the way that that leaves somebody feeling, the way that it leaves you feeling, and then the way that like that ripples out into their day and the way that they interact with other people, like that is so powerful.
Yeah.
It's huge.
It's a cool
and I
thing.
think, when we talk about surrounding yourselves with people that have like a similar mindset, right? That doesn't mean like don't hang out with people who are struggling or need some additional love, because, obviously you need to hang around people that are, vibrating at the same frequency or whatever, like on that kind of same vibe, but like don't exclude people either, because you never know like what that, your newfound mindset or your gratitude could do for somebody else. That could completely change their day. That could completely change their life, and they can start thinking about things differently, proposition things to them like, what was the best part of your day? What are you grateful for? What is something small that happened to you today that's really good that you're grateful for? Like building those things in, because like, there are a lot of bad things that happen in life. So like being able to help our friends and our family members understand that there are things to be thankful for, like that's a huge, I don't want to say it's a responsibility, but it's like it's a gift that we can give, right? Like that's a really cool thing. So yeah,
I think that goes into with like if you do have to do that, you can go back and kind of be intentional and like observe like where you're thinking and what your thoughts are. You can kind of fill your headspace either prior or after. It's like it's hard to do it, but I feel like if you can like have that headspace to where you are like, okay, I am grateful. Like even if I have to hang out with someone that isn't vibrating on the same, or what, not have to, but you are doing that. It's like, well, you can go into it like, okay, I'm grateful for this. I'm stoked for this. And then,
just like almost try and bring people
bring
to
the
that
energy
level.
there.
And it's like more often than not, like you do find people on that same level. Like I know it sometimes, like I've seen it personally with myself. Like I'll go ride like mountain bikes with my dad, and like I'm like so busy, overwhelmed, and like we get done riding, and like I'm like, oh, so stoked, and he's like, I know you needed that, and it's like, but he's tolerant enough to like invite me to go ride, put up with me being like just a sour asshole, and then midway through the ride, like I'm like, okay, I'm stoked, like it's funny how that works, but it's like sometimes you just got to stick it out, and like put yourself around people, like, because if you are bummed, like seek those people out. Seek those people that are the ones who are inspiring to you or inspirational to you, and try and get some of that energy.
And then you can like take your ownership too, and like what's given to you at that time too. And it's like it's hard like whenever you're in it, like, oh, this sucks, but like if you can take that step back and be like, okay, I'm in this, but I want to be here, what do I need to change or go through to get to that end goal? It's hard.
Well, and with that being said, like I think that's a good one, because it's good to be aware and grateful of where you stand today and where you were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And it's funny because me and Cheyenne just had this conversation the other day. We were driving out to Sandstone Skate Park, which is just like 5 minutes east here of the roastery. And there's this apartment complex over there. And I remember like when I would drive past that apartment complex there, it was like the third floor, and it was a unit that faced towards the mountains. And at night I would drive by like going to the skate park or whatever. And this guy had like, from what I could tell from the road, which is pretty far away, like it would look like it was decorated so cool. And he had like 2 monitor office, and he would always be sitting there at his desk working. And I would always like tell Cheyenne, I'd be like, dude, that's the goal right there. I would love that so much. And like, I think I was still living, I had a small little studio apartment that was like 350, 400 square foot, very tiny, like, and it was just functional, And the other day we were driving past that, and I like pointed over to that apartment with Cheyenne, and I was like, dude, it took me a second to acknowledge where we were today. And it's like, I'm very thankful to have essentially that same exact setup. Like we have a beautiful mountain view from our house. Like I have the 2 monitor desk set up, and like I love sitting at my desk and working. And I was just like, it did hit me. Like I was overwhelmed with gratefulness because I, reflected for a second and like I understood and took ownership of where we stand today. And it's sometimes very hard to do because like, instinctually we always want more.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing, but also like be aware of where you're at and like where you have been. Maybe you have more than you did yesterday and maybe you have less, but like just own that and figure out like how you proceed forward. But either way, be grateful for those moments because that is making you who you are, but like, yeah, it did hit me super hard. That was like a week ago. I was just like, holy crap. Like it was just a cool like perspective to have, right? It's like, I thought that dude was like the king of the world, and like to step back and like look at like where life has taken us. And I was like, holy crap, like I'm the king of the world now, like it's kind of funny. Like, and it's like not by any means that we are like the most successful or living so lavishly, but it was just noticing that we had accomplished that thing, like without even being aware that was a thing that we had accomplished, right?
Yeah. Totally.
So like stepping back and like owning that and just being grateful, I think it's huge. So
yeah.
I even think about that like with my current situation I'm dealing with. I was telling one of my friends, like, I'm so bummed that all of my socials are gone. It sucks really, really bad. But I was telling her, I was like, maybe this is just like, it's a bump in the road that I needed to go through to like get to the next side of whatever that success in those, capacities are. So like maybe this bump like is something that's going to push me forward into something bigger and greater than what I could see previous to this happening. So yeah, just another little moment of like observing where you're at and observing the moment that you're in and casting that vision for what's next. But
yeah, I feel like you kind of need the shake up sometimes too. It's like a kind of healthy, it's like it helps you kind of like, okay, am I practicing what I'm preaching? If this hits me, it's like, it's kind of nice whenever it hits, like if a storm hits you, like, okay, it makes you kind of confident. It makes you like actually commit to like being being grateful, not gratitude, sorry. And like makes you like want to practice those,
Yeah,
so.
totally.
Well, it's like, we've talked about it a number of times as well, but like on these episodes, but like, how beneficial, like you're saying, like those hurdles can be, because it's like we think we know where we're going. And then sometimes you get to like the why in the road, or sometimes you get to the road that you think is going to be there and like the road's fucked up, and you have to like make a new road. And like you can't predict any of those things. Cheyenne could have never predicted that she was going to go to log on to her Instagram that she's been building for 6 years now, and that it would have been deleted. Like you cannot predict those kind of things. There's so many things in life that we can't predict. But I think when those things do happen, like even though they can be really shitty, like to be grateful for those moments, because, it is a pivot point. And you can either choose to dwell in the fact that something bad has happened, or you can say, okay, this happened, how can we move forward? How can we move forward and be better than we were yesterday? Be grateful for those shitty moments, because, and I'm not saying don't be bummed, you can be bummed out about it. It can be a bad thing. Like not everything again is going to be sunshine and rainbows. However, if you can look at hard moments and say, okay, how can we either make this not happen again, or how can we build on this, or whatever it is, then you can start to form, that mindset of gratefulness.
Yeah.
It's very easy to, when bad things happen, to just kind of wallow in it and be like, why does it always happen to me, or whatever it is,
So easy.
It's very easy to do,
Yeah.
But if you can, again, step back from that and be like, okay, where do we go from here? And 9 times out of 10, if you start building that mentality, being grateful for bad things almost, or adversity, being grateful for adversity.
Here we go.
Yeah, you can navigate that a lot faster. So when it happens to you again, you can be grateful for it and move past it very quickly. And that positive mental attitude comes into play. And it's very cool. Yeah. You start going through things with a lot more velocity and a lot more energy, and that a ripple effect starts to explode, if you will. So, yeah, this has been an awesome episode.
I'm overflowing right now. I'm about to explode.
I'm buzzing.
I'm an atomic bomb.
The energy in this room right now.
Yeah, it's high, all-time high, and we're about to go do some really fun stuff.
Yes,
I'm excited that you guys are coming with me.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun day.
Neither of you have been to one of these, have you?
No.
That's
feeling
crazy.
grateful to be able to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I think at this point, I was trying to think about it the other day, but I've done like 30 or 35 of these. So
I've done a lot of them.
it's been super fun. So I'm excited for you guys to get to experience it and see what it's all about. Yeah, I think that's all we've got for today's episode.
Be grateful. Find gratitude in your everyday.
Take a
Slow
deep
down.
breath.
Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath. Be aware of where you're at.
Yeah, life's good, man.
Life is really great.
Mhm.
It's a good place to be, right?
Plus, we're on a rock.
Yeah, we're flying around on a rock, just living the dream. Heck yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys for being here. This has been super fun. And yeah, grateful for the Traction family. It's unreal. So cool. With that being said, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Keep being scared normal. We're out.